you know, teach me, or
Yeah, yeah,
my 23-year-old daughter.
yep. It's like I am. So we're officially at the start time. So first of all, I want to welcome everybody that has just joined to Understanding Traumatic Brain Injury, TBI. The mission on this group is to get information, educate, support everyone, but most of all, bring awareness of TBI. And I want to include in this CTE because they go hand in hand pretty much. And I am not a professional in the medical field. I'm not a psychiatrist, a doctor, or anything else. I'm just a caregiver who volunteers to have this group so that you have a place to get the information in one spot. Support, and we have 4 different chat rooms that people have been utilizing because they want to have conversation off the realm of the public eye. And I get that. So I have a guest here today who is an advocate of TBI and CTE. He's an international author and speaker, 11-year NFL plus Super Bowl veteran, 2-time Ed Block Courage Award winner, MTM advocate, Paul, and I'm hoping I don't mess your name, Frase.
That was perfect. I've had announcers call me Phrasey, Frase, but that was perfect. Phrase.
Well, thank you.
Good job. I don't want you to sell yourself short. You've been a caregiver for 10 years, so you know a lot about TBI. You know what it causes. You know symptoms of TBI. You know how to deal with it. You know you've been caregiving for an intimate patient, right? So you can sound. I bet you can sound like a PhD in TBI and concussions, probably at least for a couple minutes. So that's why I always joke around. I can talk about MTM and gene transfer therapy, and I can sound really good for about 2 minutes, and then I hand it off to the doctors.
Mm-hmm.
So. But it doesn't negate the fact that you live it and you know so much about it. So thank you for having me on. I'm really excited to talk about and bring awareness.
Thank you for coming on. The videos that you share in the group is very informative, and that's what drew me to you and having you come, because I think it's an important subject, CTE, along with TBI, because there's not much information out there.
There's more and more information coming. And fortunately, we live in a good time to experience TBI. Hopefully, there's going to be a lot of research ensuing that is going to bring answers to the CTE arena. The reason I'm all about CTE is because CTE stems from repetitive TBI. Repetitive brain impacts, repetitive head impacts over and over and over and over again. And then we'll talk about a lot of the pathology and, you know, what happens when you hit your head. What happens in a traumatic experience doesn't have to be hitting your head. It could be a rape, a death of a loved one, a death of a child. You know, I'm getting chills, right? Because it's not only about getting hit in the head, you know, playing football or soccer or anything, or rugby. It's about trauma, and the brain actually reacts the same way, you know, during traumatic experiences. You and I, you've experienced a medium trauma, actual head impact injury. So you are getting one angle of the traumatic brain injury. Right. So, but they are really one of the same in the same. So.
Yeah, especially when my husband uses my brain a lot. Because, short-term memory is like the key component of the disability. A lot of people don't understand it, because a lot of people, when you say disability, you think of a wheelchair or a crutch or any kind of brace, a leg brace or something. You can't see the inside of your brain other than doing a CT scan or an MRI.
Mm-hmm. One thing I do, I'm going to look over here once in a while and try to find information that I have laying around. So TBI, it's very similar to CTE symptomology, right? I mean, Boston University, one of the foremost institutions in the world that has been studying CTE and trying to find answers. What is a concussion? A concussion has occurred anytime you have a blow to the head that caused you to have symptoms for any amount of time. We can go through all sorts. I mean, like a mild traumatic brain injury, right? Symptoms, and this is from the Mayo Clinic, not just Boston University. This is from the Mayo Clinic. Mild traumatic brain injury, the signs and symptoms of mild traumatic TBI: headache, nausea, vomiting, fatigue, drowsiness, problems with speech, dizziness, or loss of balance. You go on to moderate or severe TBI: loss of consciousness for several minutes, persistent headaches, repeated vomiting or nausea, convulsions or seizures, loss of coordination, profound confusion, agitation, slurred speech, coma, and other disorders, and memory issues. These are invisible, like you just said. You're not in a wheelchair. You don't have a broken arm. You didn't have shoulder surgery. You're not disabled. You don't have a neck roll. But the problem is, this is not working, not working the way that God intended it to work, right? And wow, it is. There's a lot of things attributed to mental health that are actually can be attributed to a traumatic brain injury from years ago.
One that comes to mind is PTSD and CPTSD. I am hoping to have in a couple more weeks someone that suffers a CPTSD, and we will probably have a discussion of the difference between the two. There's also depression. There's also anxiety, agitational issues, behavioral, personality change, executive thinking is affected. Simple problem solving is affected with someone that has a TBI. And it's important for the family unit to get education on TBI, because they're the support system of that person. And my poem, which is one of my videos, it's called My Silent Rage. That was a poem I wrote at a very beginning part of my husband's injury. What I observed from him, what he was experiencing, what he was telling me. And it's actually I've had a lot of people comment that that's me. That describes exactly who I am. And when anybody wants to understand TBI, I did about 5 informational videos researching about TBI. And I realized that somebody else could use the information. Hence, this was the evolving to what I do now with the group. Because I'm like, I got all these videos, who's going to see it? So that's why I started the group. So that the mission is to get the information out there.
So that is the mission, and it is so important because if somebody does not understand what they're going through, they might think they're going crazy. Seriously. Um,
Mm-hmm.
if a caregiver, or not a caregiver, if a loved one or family member doesn't understand, why the heck are they getting so angry? Why are they biting back? They never used to do that. Why are they exploding? What's going on? If the family members and the close people around them don't know about symptoms and TBI and don't know how to diffuse some of the reaction, don't react to a TBI, somebody that's experiencing TBI symptoms from. But if they don't understand it, they're behind the eight ball. There's no hope for that relationship. There's no hope for that communication. Now, when I was 47, I'm 59 years old. When I was 47 years old, and so I played 11 years in the NFL. I played 20 years of organized football, high school and college, in the NFL, and I hit my head probably 6, 7, 8,000 times, up to 10,000 times, and that they would call that a subconcussive hit. And these things will bring attitude changes. You can expect. I love this movie called Quiet Explosions. Dr. Gordon focuses on PTSD and veterans, men and women veterans, and he says you can expect, after one TBI, you can expect a totally different personality within 1 year. A personality change within 1 year. And if you know that person for 10 years or 25 years and all of a sudden they change, you're like, what's going on? Well, at 47, I changed. I became apathetic and I started redlining. I call it going 0 to 60, jugular veins going up, popping out of my throat. I call it redlining, and I didn't care. This time you're going to listen to me.
Mm-hmm.
Fortunately, I had never been modeled domestic abuse or violence, other than on the football field, right? But I didn't care. I knew I was going there. But when I started studying CTE and I got involved with the clinical trials at Boston University, probably about 48 years old, I said, okay, these are the symptoms. There's a good chance I'm dealing with that. Can I cognitively make the decision to walk out of the room instead of go 0 to 60? And fortunately, I could. Some people, some family members, some people who have experienced TBI, they can't make that cognitive decision, and the caregivers really have to be in tune to, okay, how do we deal with this situation? It's so important. What you're doing, the informational videos, it's just paramount to help. So.
You know, I had one woman ask me a question: how do you deal with the agitation? When you get agitated, how do you? And my background, I've worked in an ABA program for 6+ years with autistic children. And ABA was designed to work with autistic children, then move to TBI. I had it backwards when I told you. And when I was working in the school system, there was a point where I said to my coworkers, I don't leave my job after his accident. I don't leave my job. I do it 24/7, and it's natural. And the other thing is, I simplified my language around my husband, so I'm short to the point, and I automatically go there. So it's like sometimes I catch myself, like I'm talking to you, and I might just like suddenly go into short thing, and it's like I'm not being rude. It's just that I automatically go there. But when you have a person that's agitated, like if you're in a store, here's an example. Shopping with my husband's fun. And I say that. And he gets so agitated, the store's crowded, he can't help it. So if I see that there's little signs that you can see of your loved one is their breathing changes, or they're sharp with or they're starting to complain more, than there's a window of opportunity that you can turn it around by redirecting their mind, saying, hey, look at this, isn't this a great price? Or, hey, do you know? Or talk about something that they're looking forward to, or something, just to redirect their mind so that they will forget why they're getting agitated.
Mm. That is so. I listened to Bob Stern. He was involved with he was one of the lead researchers on the first clinical trial I was involved with at Boston University, trying to find biomarkers for CTE. And he just did a talk they did a big symposium of caregiving for CTE. And one of his last thing was, he had a list of 10 do's and 10 don'ts, and his last thing was diversion. Exactly what you have, but like you said, it's a small window of opportunity. And I know some people that know that sometimes I get a little short fused and agitated. I know when that it's perfect. They use diversion. I'm like, oh, you're using diversion. Okay, I must be acting like an ass right now, so I'm gonna chill out a little bit. Yeah. But again, some people have had a profound impact, and they don't realize what they're doing, or what's happening to them.
No. I remember when my husband first came home, he wasn't a good patient to begin with. He'd never been in a hospital, was totally confused. His mood swings were off the chart. He was on a lot of medication, which they were weaning him off. But the one that he's on is the more popular one that they use, Epico, because it's a dual thing for mood swings and for seizures, prevent seizures, which they can't take them off. Because also with TBI, you get tremors that mimic like Parkinson's, but you're also high risk for Parkinson's. Right now, that's where we're at with him. Trying to get a specialist to look into the tremors to see what's causing the tremors. But with the force of the back of the head and the brain slapping up against the front caused a secondary injury. So the left side expanded more, so they don't know why. And they think that's what's probably causing the tremoring. So, but they get medication for that. But besides my education, I do have a lifetime experience with TBI. I don't talk about it that often, but it's the reason why I went into the field of working with special needs. And it's my older sister suffered a severe head injury. We almost lost her. I was about 2. And it was a horrific accident in Massachusetts where 11 kids were walking home, including my sister. A woman had a medical emergency behind the wheel of the car. Instead of hitting the brake, she hit the gas and hit all 11 kids. I think I told you the story. 3 died instantly. 1 died 4 days later. And my sister was the most severest to survive. She had to relearn everything all over. She was 7, so there wasn't much of a long-term memory to start with, to begin with. And if somebody has a TBI, moderate or mild, the long-term memory stays. So you have a basic perspective of who that person's going to be. With her, she was the agitation, aggressive type, because she didn't have control over it. So growing up with that helped me understand my husband, which is a full circle for me. But not many people have that knowledge or that experience. And that's why I put forth this group, to bring that to people.
Have you ever been to a doctor and a neurologist, a doctor, MD, this and that, or psychiatrist searching for how many doctors have asked you, hey, have you ever had a traumatic brain injury? I mean, did you ever hit your head when you were a kid? Did you have any concussions? Did you ever black out?
I had one, and it was my primary care doctor yelled at me because I had a cabinet door open and I was on a chair because I'm so short. I'm 5'2". Everything's always up top. So I climbed on a chair, came full force into that, gashed my head. I saw stars. I should have went to the emergency room, but I didn't. I was bleeding. And ever since then, I have auras, I have migraines. I herniated 2 discs in my neck from that little wonderful little, but it healed. But I have my moments.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm overtired or something, I get migraines.
So how many of us are cringing at that story, thinking of, I did that just last week, or I've done that. Maybe it was bad, but I've hit my head on cabinets. I saw stars a few times when I was growing up. Absolutely. Do you? One thing that was absolutely fascinating to me is after a TBI, how many years do you think that inflammation continues? The cytokine storm of inflammatory cytokines continues after that one TBI, up to 17 years. They still can still find like interleukin 6, which is it shows inflammation in the brain, right? It stays with you. Like you said, you still kind of see aura sometimes. And doctors do not ask you your history, and the mental health. One thing that I've been fascinated with is trying to find natural remedies that might help the inflammation, lower the inflammation in the brain. Because again, going back to Dr. Gordon from Quiet Explosions, he told me, I've actually, he's a friend of mine now, and I kind of started stalking him. I went to a couple of his not his events and his talks, and I really was fascinated with inflammation. And he would say, it's not Parkinson's, it's not Alzheimer's, it's not ALS, it's not CTE, it's inflammation. It starts with the inflammation, and all of the indications do actually. And the inflammation just starts that cascading, and each indication, the Alzheimer's, the Parkinson's, so on and so forth, they have their own specific, pathologies, and that affect the patient a certain way. That's for sure. But something as simple as omega-3s.
Mm-hmm.
Omega-6s and omega-3s and 6s pre-processed foods was in a ratio of 1 to 2, 1 to 3. Omega-3s, anti-inflammatory. Omega-6s will cause inflammation. Inflammation is not bad in and of itself. Inflammation is there to protect the brain in an acute situation and usher in and start healing the brain. But eventually that inflammation needs to leave the brain.
Right.
But anyway, the omega-3s and omega-6s, anti-inflammatory, inflammation. Now, after processed foods and soy-based everything has something soy-based in it, which is omega-6s and stuff. That ratio is about 1 to 26. So just 1 to 26. So just in our diets alone, the whole craze and buzzword over the last 10 years is inflammation, inflammation. It's true.
Mm-hmm.
And and we don't give our brains a chance to rest after a TBI because we are still feeding ourselves inflammatory diets. We're not doing the things that we need to do to treat that TBI. So
yeah, diet is definitely diet and exercise, rest, all the necessary things we need to do. We live in a world that we're just in a rush to get to A and B, and we don't care what's in between. We just go.
mm-hmm.
And like you said, there's a lot of causes to head injuries and TBIs, and falls is like number one. Vehicle related accidents are another one. Collisions, violence, like domestic violence. I had another guest that talked about domestic violence and how much that causes TBI.
That's high on the list too. That's one of the most prominent causes of TBI.
And unfortunately, like gun wounds, kids are getting abused. Women, men can get abused just as much as women. Shaking baby syndrome is considered a TBI. There's sports injuries, as we talked about, football, boxing, baseball, lacrosse, skateboarding, hockey, or just to name a few. Explosive blasts for our military. They suffer TBIs through that. When they're in a war and something blows up around them and they get thrown and they hit their head, they don't even have to hit their head. Just the vibration from the explosion can cause. And I mean, there's so many things. It's just amazing how the brain can reconnect itself if it has to compensate the loss. But once the damage is done, the damage is done. It's not like your arm that can heal, And I don't know. I was somewhere with something and I just lost it.
Well, it can't heal unless you give it the nutrients and give it the environment to do what it's supposed to do. We as layperson, I'm not a doctor. The verdict's still out, but I sure want to figure out how to heal the CTE in my head if I'm dealing with it, because I can't say definitively if I have it. But the latest research out of Boston University, 346 out of 375 deceased NFL players had CTE. Bob Stern will tell you, well, that's a biased sample because most of the patients, they knew, the family members knew that they were acting the fool during the last decade or 2 decades of their life. So they say, hey, test my loved one's brain and tell us what you find in it. Well, so that's 91.7%, right? Well, what is the real number? 50%? If you have a double-blinded, non-biased, sample, what is it really?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, we the rush should be on to really get this information out and give people some good information and some opportunity to get the inflammation down in their brain and hope to start to either arrest the progression or possibly reverse and have some good positive results, from therapy.
Yeah, it also depends on where the brain is injured too. Makes a big component of the TBI and the outcome too. My husband's was in the back of his head, and the trauma doctor told me that they had to jump in sooner to intubate him because his was unfortunately controlling his breathing, which was scary. And, you know, all these thoughts go in your head. Is he going to remember me? Is he going to remember the kids? Is he going to be, how is he going to be? And I ended up doing my own assessments because my tech head went into that. I knew he wasn't going to be the aggressive one, even though, see, that was the thing that really upset me. And I hope that these professionals are not saying this to other people that, oh, well, you need a companion for him or a nurse or something, because what if he becomes aggressive and domestic? You're scaring people. My thought is, it makes sense to me. I'm not a doctor, but it makes sense to me that if your long-term memory is still intact, that is who you are. You remember your childhood memories. You remember what your parents taught you. So in my mind, with my husband, who is a very giving person and not violent, would not be physically violent. He would be more verbal, which he ended up being, which we got that under control. It took time, but we got it under control. Now he knows if he feels himself getting agitated, he walks away. So he's learned that. He's gotten into a better groove as far as that. But it doesn't necessarily mean they're going to get aggressive. Don't.
I think that's the awareness too. That if again, my situation at 47, I was yelling at my beautiful little 13-year-old like a freaking lunatic. You know, after the third time of saying it calmly, can you please do this, honey? You're gonna do what? Listen to me. I know. You know what? Acting like a crazy man. And I knew I was. But I was like,
this wasn't quite right.
Yeah, just listen. You know, but again, when I started understanding, just like you said, your husband has been able to say, okay, I know I'm getting agitated and I want to engage, but maybe I just walk away for a minute. So I walked out. This was happening. This rage was happening probably once every couple of weeks, maybe. And I found out that I could, okay, can I make the decision to say, I know I'm going there. I don't want to go there. I need to go out the front door for 3 minutes. And I started doing that. Even to the point where my beautiful daughter says, Dad, you're just walking away. You're not even facing it. And I'm like, I'm thinking to myself, you don't want me in here right now. I need to go out and just straighten things out. Well, that went from once every 2 weeks to once a month to once a quarter. Now maybe once a year. And I don't get road rage as much. I actually let people in, and I probably get honked at for driving a little too slow sometimes, but it's awareness.
Yeah. Awareness
of the caregiver, and if the person affected with the TBI can still grasp this, like you said, somewhere in the mind, that long-term memory or of who you really are. You know, if you can find that for a brief second, you might have that window of opportunity. You're talking about, shopping and diverting yourself.
The trauma doctor that I had he was awesome. I have to say he was very awesome, because when he said he had a moderate TBI, I was like, what is that? I know he has a head injury, but is that the type of head injury? What is it? So his way of explaining what a TBI or a head injury to me was, and I love his analogy of it. You have your computer, it's running fine, and all of a sudden it crashes. Then when it boots up, some of the software connects 100%. Great, you're set. Some connect a little bit, kind of not so great. And then there's some that don't connect at all.
Mm.
And that's what our brain, our computer. And I'm like, I use that every time because I think that's a great analogy of what TBI is when you get hit and you lose consciousness, they use the glow scale to determine whether it's mild, moderate, or severe. And your brain is going to shut down. He had a seizure, which is not uncommon when you have a head injury, because your whole brain just goes into shock. And he hasn't, that I know of, had any more. He fell like a year ago. We don't know why. And that's how they found that this side of his head expanded. So we still don't know why. Finding a neurologist that would look at him. We're working with a specialist. He's not around right now, but they do have tremor neuro specialists that you can go see, which I didn't know. I found out on my own through another neurologist, through his fall. So, I mean, that's what I'm talking about. No aftercare and no information. Where are these people supposed to find the information if they run into a problem? They go to a primary and they look at them like, well, you've been dealing with this for a couple years, should be fine. No, there is absolutely possibilities of having more symptoms of something else. Doesn't show up right away. That shows up later. And that's the after effects of the main event to your brain.
It's definitely hard because you're right. Not all neurologists or so Dr. Gordon is a neuroendocrinologist, and specializes in the endocrine system and obviously the brain. So, but not all these doctors are progressive enough to look outside the box. To ask you if you've ever hit your head, if you hit your head a few times recently, maybe 20 years ago, whatever, but there are more and more people that are starting to understand, or more and more doctors that are starting to ask, have you hit your head? I have my doctor that she's Dr. Mizell DeMayo. She actually, she's a doctor of psychiatry, and she actually uses a screening of 28 neurosteroids, hormones, neuroactive steroids in the body every quarter. But she also, she checks the levels, and it's actually Dr. Gordon's protocol. But she also takes some genetics, and she takes genetic testings, and what's the buzzword been about neuroplasticity? What we've heard this for about 10, 12 years, right? Neuroplasticity. Oh, you actually can have grow the dendrites and get your cells to talk, work together better. Oh, you can actually, but that's called brain-derived neurotrophic factor, BDNF. Dr. DeMayo takes my genetics, and she says, oh, you have a low factor, you're not good. If you have a low factor of the BDNF, you actually can't recover from TBI or concussions as well as somebody who has a strong factor of BDNF. So if I hit my head 8,000 times in 20 years, and 17 years after I still have the cytokine storm effects of inflammation, it's just like in Alzheimer's. All of a sudden, you get the phosphorylated tau protein attacking the microtubules that is supposed to help, and then you get neurofibular tangles and then you get a bunch of neurons dying, and then you have CTE, and then you have so
The list
yeah.
goes on.
But these, okay, go back to the BDNF. There's also an MTHFR gene that everybody's talking about. I've heard a lot about it. You kind of, it's the folic acid. It's the way that the brain takes the folic acid and turns it into a methylfolate and so on and so forth, and it's due to your synthesis of your neurosteroids, epinephrine, norepinephrine, dopamine, serotonin, all that stuff. But all these things are very important to start to see if you can get a therapy, lower the inflammation, get your brain in you call it a neuropermissive environment, give your brain the right nutrition, the right things it needs, and hopefully you're going to be able to support brain health or bring back some brain health, or at least arrest the progression of the demise of your brain health. But there's so much to it, and I know I just got off in a tangent and got all medical, this and that.
I actually learned something new. I didn't even know about the inflammation lasting 17 years. That's why I have guests come on, so I can learn too. I don't know. This is sharing information and educating each other, and that's what it's communicating.
Mm-hmm.
And how do we drive this to bring awareness is doing these things.
That's a good point. It's not sexy talk, is it? It's not, how are you gonna be a great business person and earn $1 million in the next 12 months, and that's exciting. Okay, am I good? No, TBI, brain injury, that's your problem.
Yeah,
Sue, that's your problem. Well, that's a lot of people's problems, and it's a lot of people's problems, and they don't understand it's the problem.
Right, exactly. And for people that have gone home, they plateaued, you're fine, go home, blah 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 blah, you're good. No, they're not good. They're not good. They're going home to their loved ones, a different person.
Mm-hmm.
A whole different, not completely, but I got new bread sheets, thought he would like it and did this and that. But I was going by, and I call it the old Dan. And I have had people look at me when I tell them, you go through a period of mourning.
Mm.
And they look at me and I go, what I mean by that is you're mourning the person that left your house before the accident. And you have to let go of that person so that you can accept the new person, and you're relearning as they are relearning themselves. Because they're not the same person that left your house that day.
That is powerful. And if people could only really grasp what you're saying. I worked with a guy, I played with a guy for 5 or 6 years in the NFL, and he played I think a total of 9 years. And he was 49 when he died 4 or 5 years ago. And he was found to have stage 3 CTE.
Oh, wow.
And the last 10 to 15 years of his life, he married his college. I think they got married in college. and they were a sweet family. They had 3 kids. He was a he was kind of passive, very quiet, funny guy, nice. But the last 10 years, he started doing some things that were way out of character for him. And he would come to his wife and he didn't know what was going on. And there's something wrong with me. And he did some things that he shouldn't have been doing. And the older son had to kick him out of the house. Now, this story is public, and the wife has told it on podcasts, and it's on the internet. And it's a very, very powerful story, but it really is akin to what you're saying. These personalities of your loved ones can change drastically, dramatically. You can say, "What? Who are you?"
Mm-hmm.
And they're the result of TBI, CTE, in his case, and man, and then this is what got me. This is one of the reasons that I got so passionate about this. I was studying the CTE stuff, and this story happened. This took place. My friend died, and I talked to his wife, and his wife felt guilty because they had to kick him out of the house, and the 3 kids felt horrible. But I said, the fact of the matter is he was doing things that by all means, by all rights, you had to kick him out of the house.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, you can't beat yourself up over that because you did not know. You didn't have the knowledge of what happens. He had little black specks, just like Junior Seau, who killed himself. He had black specks, neurofibrillary tangles, a bunch of freaking dead neurons in the brain. But I said, you didn't know, so you can't beat yourself up. And I actually talked to the family, the wife and the 3 kids, on their way to the oldest son's football game. Yeah. And I said, you didn't know. And I said, you have to understand, he didn't know either.
No.
He was asking you 2 or 3 years, he was acting the fool, and he was asking you, hey, I don't feel right. There's something wrong. But he didn't know. If he had known, and I'm saying this from experience, because I experienced rage, and again, I can't say I have CTE until I die and they cut my brain open.
Right.
But Boston University is trying to do, they have a new clinical trial that's just from a blood draw, to see if they have biomarkers. I guess there's a new blood draw for Alzheimer's that is very good to detect Alzheimer's, and they're kind of going on the same premise for CTE. But the fact of the matter is, unless you know about it, when I understood what I might be going through, I was given the second chance or the opportunity to say, oh, okay, I don't want to get angry. I don't want to act like the fool. I want to stop drinking. Can I do it?
Mm-hmm.
But having my beautiful daughter, she came to me 4 or 5 years later, and she says, Dad, I understand why you were walking out the front door. And I only had to do that 3 or 4 times.
Right.
Right. And okay. I got this. But anyway.
Oh, yes. Just getting the information to the families and the person that's actually going through it. I mean, I wish there's more. I think there's a little bit more now than they were 10 years ago. Like you said, there's blood tests. I've been reading articles that they're finding blood tests for TBIs and all kinds of stuff, which is great. But we need like more specialists that just deal with TBI and CTE.
We're so the one thing I want to share with people, just like some guys, you know, I get passionate. Again, I get passionate because I have some guys, some peers from the NFL that have told me they would rather just die, kill themselves.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, no, there's a better way. There's a better way. You can affect your um, there's hope. There is absolutely
That's
hope.
there.
I thank you so much for giving people the information of quiet explosions, because there's hope.
There is that. I mean, when I watched that, thank you for recommending it. I was like sitting there just blown away about all the information and just the sense of hope.
And you talk about, you know, the Andrew Marr. He's featured. He's a Marine, a Green Beret, blast explosive specialist. You know, and after his 4th tour, he was getting. They had him on 7 drugs, 7 pharmaceuticals,
Wow.
and he's off all of them.
Oh, good.
Really regimented, very strict, very. And I just talked to him about 6 months ago, and I was talking about Andrew. Hey, I'm doing some work in lowering my inflammation, but sometimes I like chocolate chip cookies a little too much, so I just blow my inflammation out, numbers out the window. And he says, Paul, he said, I have it so tied in. I know exactly what if I do this, it's gonna do something and make me go squirrely. So he keeps it very regimented. So, and I talked to some athletes. I was talking to a gentleman who's becoming a friend. He was a rodeo guy. He's in his late 50s, mid 50s. And I'm thinking, oh wow, rodeo. How many? Every time he's on a bucking bronco, and if he's any good, he's staying on a few seconds, and his whiplash, boom, 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 boom. That's TBI. Every ride, he's got like 17 DBIs, right?
The brain is like being slapped up against the skull.
And the brain is the consistency of soft butter, and there's jagged edges in the frontal lobe on the inside of your brain, and you boom, and you why no wonder.
Yeah
You're dealing with the left side hemorrhaging or swelling, and how and what. Man, it's mind-blowing when you get into the science of the brain. 1 grain of sand, the size of 1 grain of sand, and there's like 100,000 neurons. And I'm like, what are you talking about? You're out of your freaking mind. Well, you have 100 billion neurons in your head, 80 to 100 billion, 80 to 100 billion, and 1 sand piece is a million. 100,000, and in that 1 grain of sand, there's dendrites. There's like, I think it's in the millions. It's like little dendrites, little hairs talking to each other. But if you do one thing, if you have one hormone out of whack, if your pituitary is not talking to your hypothalamus the way it used to when you were young, or after a hit, after a concussion, after a car accident, after an accident on the job, all of a sudden you're not creating the same levels of these vital hormones and neurosteroids and neuroactive steroids. Neurosteroids, the ones that are created in your brain above your neck. Neuroactive steroids that are created in your gut. Really? oh, gut health really is important.
Yeah.
You actually create brain chemicals in your gut, right? And interestingly, what do you create those brain chemicals out of? The main ingredient is cholesterol.
Mm-hmm.
But
I have good cholesterol. I'm doing good.
Good.
But I mean, everything in your aspect of your mental health is not connected good. Your health is not good. It's not going to help you. You got to be in a good level. And, there's a lot of things that does affect our lives, different kinds of traumas. And I'm leading into your book, The Game Changer, I believe. And that book, if you care to talk about it and your son.
One of the, and I really didn't look at this as a trauma that could cause inflammation until I really took a deep dive into quiet explosions and CTE and TBI. But we had a son. He was born in 1995, and he was one of 55 known cases in the world. And it took us 5 months to get a diagnosis after a nerve and muscle biopsy. And he had what's called myotubular myopathy. And I was just saying, basically they sent us home to take care of our son over his dying days. And we found out 50% of these kids don't even make it to their second birthday. I was like, being a professional athlete, I'm like, well, just tell me, give me the playbook. Tell me how to keep my son alive. They couldn't. And Allison knew they couldn't because it was such a rare disorder that you were talking about how many neurologists ask you if you've had a head injury. Well, how many neurologists actually knew about a disorder that there was only affected 55 known cases in the world? I didn't.
Right.
So Allison, I call her, she's from New York, and I call it the chutzpah. She's got a lot of chutzpah, and she never took no for an answer. And she said, we're going to use your platform and raise a bunch of money, and we're going to. And her mother-in-law found a great doctor, a number 2 or 3 doctor in the world in regenerative medicine, and man, after 24 years of advancements and pushing forward, we went into clinical trials. So this is my boy Joshua. He actually lived 40 days shy of his 16th birthday. This is probably a few years before we lost him. Now, obviously, his mom Allison and Nibs is a dog that actually had what the genetic disorder in the R69 something gene. See, I told you I could sound kind of smart. But Joshua did not make myotubularin. And these kids' muscles, 30 to 40% of their muscles do not mature. They basically get stuck in about the second trimester of utero. So he was really, really weak, really weak. So Mama, it's an X-linked MTM. Mama gives it to her son, her boys. Yeah. How do you find a large experimental model that we can save the lives of and see if we can translate the science to children? Well, Nibs, Nibs takes up a couple chapters of this book. Nibs has the exact same mutation that Allison and women like Allison carry if they have the MTM gene disruption. Nibs gave us 13 puppies, and we started a colony. We found Nibs in Saskatoon, in Leader, Canada, and the Saskatchewan province of Canada.
Wow.
And
Wow.
we didn't manipulate a large a dog, a canine model. It was a needle in a haystack. Unbelievable story in one of the chapters, how Allison found Nibs. Award-winning book. It's been out 14, 15 months. And it's a story about hope, what we're talking about, hope, love, and inspiration. You know, if you look back at, you know, this type of trauma, you know, will absolutely cause some of the things, the cascading that we're talking about, the cytokine storms, the inflammatory issues in the brain. So but you get a little bit of hope. You know, we've got kids that they had one shot of gene transfer therapy and they're off their ventilators. Some are walking.
Oh,
and it's all clinical information, and it's you know, that's public information. So it's been a journey. We lost Joshua again in 2010 Christmas Eve. Great story. And we're just affected by Joshua's life every day. Game changer.
You can put a link on where you can find your book and some information about your foundation too on the group so that they can find it.
Awesome. We were talking about how tax savvy I was or not, right? So basically, if you Google my name and Amazon or Amazon Paul Frase Game Changer, it'll pop right up, or Allison Rock.
You know what? I can include it with
Great.
this. I can include it with this, attach it to this if I can.
Great.
It's a learning process. I've gotten a little bit better with my lives, and I notice my lights are just like dying. But each live I do a little bit different, and I try to improve so I don't, you know. I kind of like this setup because everything's right here, and I can look at you. But yeah. As long as there's hope, there's life.
Right. Yeah, it's worth living too, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And you know, I wouldn't wish anybody to go through what we go through, but at the same time, I'm blessed he's still here.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
I look at him and I'm like, you're a walking miracle.
Right.
6 or 7 neurologists told me for him, the type of injury that he sustained, he shouldn't even be here.
Wow.
Never walking and talking.
Right.
He's walking and talking. But he walked to work every day, 2 miles a day, every day. And I think that's what had saved him because he was in good condition. Even though he had high cholesterol and everything, but I think that's what saved him pretty much. A lot of people, I can never, ever repay those that were there during his accident because he was 6 to 8 feet up in the air when the safety let go. The ladder collapsed. He was greasing the boom of his bucket truck because he worked as a working foreman, and that was part of maintaining the equipment. And he fell, and his foreman, he wasn't a working foreman. His foreman was happened to just pull up because he talked to him. He witnessed the whole thing. Ran down to engineering for this other guy who had experience in the service with TBI, knew exactly what to do to keep the head off. So if there's anybody you witness fall and you think they hit their head, make sure somebody keeps that head off the ground because the pressure of the head being so heavy could crush the fracture in the back of the head. And he saved him from that part. And I thank God for Billy and Sean and Craig. God bless him. I'm going to cry because he died the very same thing he saved my husband from.
Oh.
He got a motorcycle accident and suffered a TBI. So without them, he wouldn't be here today.
Mm.
So I have somebody that's with me that survived it, and I lost someone that didn't.
Mm-hmm.
And Craig made sure that we were taken care of. He picked him up for work when they sent him back to work. Why they sent him back to work, I have no idea. That's another thing. That's another subject for another video.
Mm-hmm.
Workman's comp needs to be
Mm.
revamped. I'm sorry, but I have issues of them sending him back to work when he shouldn't have. But Craig made sure my lawn was done. We had so much community support that gave me hope that there are people out there that are caring and giving.
Mm-hmm.
So I pay forward, and I'm paying forward with this group.
That's wonderful. That's again, that's a powerful story. And you said you had 5, 6, 7 neurologists that they were surprised he's even alive. Well, that's a testament to the care that the friends gave him at the scene, and the care that you have been able to afford him, just one-on-one every day, 24/7, and obviously the community gathering around, and even something is just like in our situation, people don't understand. One night a month of respite, if you can sit with somebody or a child with autism, that you have a friend with a child with autism, if you could give those parents one night off a month, it will change their lives, right? You said you've had some community people coming around you and helping you out, or
My
cook maybe.
are the greatest because they watch the kids while I had to go to the hospital. Friends watched my kids,
And you didn't have to worry about it.
No, because I got to concentrate because I was torn. What do I do with a 10 and 12-year-old? Because that's how old they were. Versus I had to be with my husband at the same time, and it was just that pull.
How did the kids deal with it? They're 20 in their 20s now, right?
Yeah, my oldest she's 21, and my son's 19. My son became the little man. He took the role at 10 years old to make sure mom was okay.
Wow. Mm.
Whenever he would see me, he would just give me a hug because he felt like I needed a hug. Mm. My daughter did the best she could. She was very close to her father. Mm-hmm. But she's been diagnosed with CPTSD. Did I say that right? I think I did. She's going through counseling. She has layers of trauma. Like she's Shrek, he says a ogre has layers. Well, she has layers of being bullied and all that. But when you have your own kid, like my daughter, suffering from PTSD, now CPTSD, you go through the suicide ideation and the whole remorse. And it's not tension getting, it's not tension seeking. It's a real thing. Can't see it like a TBI.
Right.
It's a mental health issue. And she's lost a lot of friends because they don't understand the education about that. That's why I want to do the thing. I did a video of PTSD as well for adolescents because of her. So that's another area that, and what is it? we had to explain to my kids. Well, I had to. When my kids were small, I used to have a stuffed raccoon. I love raccoons. And we named him Robbie. And when they were little, we used to have a little story time at the end of the day, especially when they went to school. I would bring out Robbie and we would have a Robbie story. And lo and behold, if I heard something from a teacher or something, Robbie experienced the same thing my kids did. And then I would give Robbie up to my kids and let them tell me a story of the next adventure for Robbie. How would Robbie handle it? That was my way of teaching them certain situations come out and how are you going to deal with it? So I brought Robbie out to talk about the TBI and how Robbie's dad had the same thing and he's not the same. His personality changed, but he's still daddy. He looks like daddy. And there's some pieces of daddy, but there's some pieces that are missing.
Wow.
Because I traumatize them any more than what they were. And they ended up getting more because when they sent him back to work, he went back to the place where he got hurt, which caused more trauma for them and me because I started having panic attacks.
You mentioned your sister at 7 years old. You were 3, 2. And how much did that play into your ability to create Robbie?
To have somebody to talk to, because when I was up, my mother had focused on my sister.
Right.
I had grandparents. They were like second parents to me, so I had them. But I just felt that, kids relate to stuffed animals. And if it was something that they could relate to and not be afraid to talk about, and I wanted to make sure that they could come to me to talk to. And it's part of my being a sped paraprofessional type person that I am. If I see an opportunity of teaching them something, I jump on it.
That's great. Well, you gave them hope too through Robbie.
Yeah.
Your instruction. So
I still have Robbie. He's a every now and then I give him a hug and say thank you.
Does he start talking to you?
No. I have to get some help.
No. I think to leave everybody with the it's awareness, it's support, it's family support and loved ones, the support of loved ones, and it's an understanding. And I was gonna write down the list from Bob Stern, and it really is a great. It's only about a 15-minute talk, but he just he talks about not engaging. It takes two to tango, right? There's to tango or tangle or get in a fight or this or that. If one kind of backs off and says, no, I'm not going to engage with this, the other one's left, what do I do?
Right.
And that's that was one simple thing. Don't engage. Don't if your loved one who suffers with a TBI repeats themselves, don't say, well, I just told you that. Don't you remember? I just told you how to do that. He says, don't do that because they don't remember.
No, and the same thing with my husband. If we have an event coming up, I'll tell him about it, and I go, I have to put myself a reminder to tell him again and again and again, because he's not going to remember it.
Yeah.
Or write it down on a calendar.
Right.
So that's, because sometimes I'll go, You never told me. Oh, maybe I didn't. I'm sorry. When I know I did, but I don't want to upset him. So it's like, yeah, maybe I should have told you. I'm sorry. Maybe I forgot. Oh well. And then he would come back with he's became a comedian since his TBI, because everything flies out of his mouth, and but
No filter.
yeah, no filter. While he was in the hospital, I was ready to make a sign, sorry, no filter, because of things. So he would come back and say, I'm the one that got hit, not you. So but I am a little older. I'm about the same age as you. Because I'll be 59 the 30th of this month.
Mm-hmm.
My husband's 58. So we're the same age. So when the 30th comes around, I become the older woman and he becomes the younger man.
Mm-hmm.
So that's been a running joke with us for 25 years. Well, over 25 years. We've been married 25 years this year. So 28 years I've known him.
Well, God bless you. That's he's fortunate to have you, and you're being a great caregiver. So keep it up.
Thank you. Plan on doing it as long as I have to. Probably forever, and I will be finding out. I'm blessed to even have him.
That's great.
So I think we overwent, which was worth it. Was worth it 100%. Ending thoughts.
My mantra is hope, love, and inspiration, and there are therapies out there. We don't have to be stuck on certain drugs that might make us feel bad or feel worse or feel just zone us out. We become a zombie. That's not there's things out there that can make you feel like you're living again, and in some instances. So don't stop searching. Don't stop trying things that that might give you some relief. But there's always hope. And if you're a caregiver, don't give up. Don't
No.
hang in there. There's
And you're amazing in what you're doing, bringing forth the awareness of CTE and being an advocate for that, and TBI, especially for being an advocate for those football players or any sports player that needs advocating for CTE. You're an amazing person for doing that.
Well, it's there. I want to. I'm 59. The average life expectancy of an NFL player that played in the defensive and offensive line is about 57. So I'm past that, and I'm thinking I'm going to beat it for about 4 decades, and I want those decades to be healthy and happy and hopeful.
Yeah. As long as, like I said earlier, as long as there's hope, there's life.
Great mantra. Love it. Well, thank you so much. It's been great to chat, and hopefully we've been able to shed some light and give people some information.
Yeah. And thank you for coming on.
Absolutely.
I appreciate your time and what you do.
Absolutely. Thank you, Sue. And we'll keep in touch,
yes.
Please.
Yeah, definitely. All right. Well, you have a great rest of your afternoon, and thank you again. And Understanding TBI is signing off. Have a great, safe day, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.